we're going to start. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the class of 2024. This is the Office of Student Engagement's Virtual Activities Fair. So really sorry that we can't welcome you onto campus, but since we can't do that, we wanted to provide you with a essence of campus life, a little bit about us. The Office of Student Engagement is a hub for student involvement on campus. We support about 600 student organizations in a wide variety of categories. And today we're focusing on a mix of drama orgs, media orgs, and kind of some other miscellaneous arts orgs. And you can sign up for other sessions at admit.stanford.edu. So my name is Ankita Rake, and I am the Director of Student Activities in the Office of Student Engagement. I'm going to be the host today. So we're going to have two different components. First, we're going to have some leaders who you see on the screen talk about those organizations that I was talking about earlier, and talk generally about them. There'll be some preset questions and some open Q&A. And then that'll be followed by a breakout session. And we're gonna chat out a link, and you can either copy that link or type in that link, and it's gonna have a list of all the other student orgs that fit in these categories and their Zoom links and information about them. And then you can go meet those groups. So I'm gonna quickly introduce our panelists so that we can begin. So if y'all wanna just wave when I say your name. So Holden is the editor-in-chief of the Stanford Daily, and Suvir is the president of Stanford Speakers Bureau, and Diana is the president of the Asian American Theater Project, and is the president of the Restorative Film Collective. Not president of Asian American Theater Project, she corrected me on that, but involved in that. And then Max is the executive editor of the Stanford Review, and Kyuan is the president of the Stanford Shakespeare Society. So Diana and Kyuan, can you first start off with what does the drama and theater community look like on campus and in Compass? And I will unmute.
Yeah, hi. So again, my name is Kyuan. I'm the president, or the actual role is executive producer of the Stanford Shakespeare Company, and we're one of the many various theater companies on campus. If you're interested in drama and theater, there are a lot of opportunities for you to join the theater scene at Stanford. There's definitely a lot of space for people with a variety of different experiences. I've never really done theater in high school, and when I got to Stanford, there's a lot of the theater scene is just really welcoming. I've done shows with the Stanford Shakespeare Company. I've also done shows with Asian American Theater Project, Ram's Head Theater Lab, which are also the theater groups on campus. And yeah, we basically have, I would say maybe 5 to 6 shows per quarter. And shows there are a lot of variety about topics of shows. The Stanford Shakespeare Company obviously does a lot of Shakespeare. Asian American Theater Project, which Diana can talk to you more about, focuses on plays that talks about issues of identity and representation of Asians and Asian Americans, etc. So yeah, there's a lot of opportunities to do theater on campus. There's also a lot of flexibility in terms of how much time you want to spend with theater.
Yeah, and just going off of that, I think something that I really appreciate about like Stanford Theater is that you don't really need to have like a significant amount of experience going into it. Like you'll be able to find a space that will help you like develop the technical skills, like the acting skills that you want, so long as you're interested in finding out about it. Through the Asian American Theater Project, I work primarily with like minority theater, so focusing on like shows about like people of color, produced by people of color, acted in by people of color. So the Asian American Theater Project, of course, like focuses on more like Asian narratives and the Asian diaspora, but we also do a lot of work with Stanford Black Stage, which is a theater company on campus that focuses on Black theater and doing work centered around like the Black diaspora. So we try to do a lot of like solidarity work, and we've been trying to put on like a lot of joint workshops together, especially in this year, as a way of like building solidarity around like the arts community for people of color on campus.
Thank you both. And then Max and Holden, same question for you. What do like the media publications community, what does that look like? Oh.
So yeah, I'm speaking from the perspective of the Stanford Daily. When I first came to Stanford, I wanted to do engineering, was pretty set on that, and I wanted to have extracurriculars that were not engineering, and that kind of drew me to the Daily. I tried out an organization called Stanford Politics as well, but eventually just kind of focused on the Daily. One thing I would really say about the media community, though, is that it's, speaking as a leader of one publication, I'm pretty familiar with leaders of other publications. We're all like so happy to recruit people at any time of the year to write, and it's such a welcoming community. Like I've never really experienced much exclusiveness with anything, and there are so many things going on at Stanford that we just frankly never get to everything that's happening, and people always have unique perspectives to offer. So one thing I would say is that like no matter what your focus is at Stanford, you can always write and pitch your writing to an organization that will publish it very happily, and it will add something, and it will be seen too. I mean, the Daily has a pretty wide readership, so I think it's a really cool opportunity. And I think also as a very large organization that has its own like Slack workspace that's very active, weekly events, even with everything being remote right now, we're still doing like game nights and stuff like that. There's a really big community aspect there as well. I found my best friends at the Daily for sure.
I'll speak a little bit about the other news organizations. The Daily is great, and we at the Review are all good friends. There are, I think, at least 5 different newspapers on campus. There's the Stanford Sphere, the Fountain Hopper, Stanford Politics, the Stanford Review, and the Stanford Daily. The Daily is obviously the biggest one of these. But the Review and other independent newspapers and news magazines are smaller groups, still very tight-knit, still contributing to campus discourse, and it's a really great time to be writing about the news on campus, publishing opinion articles, and doing journalism. And I would encourage everyone to look into which one of these publications fits their interests the best, and go for it.
Yeah, one thing too, quickly I'd add is we also have like satirical, writing on campus. There's something called the Stanford Flip Side, and there's some other there's a lot of crossover between these groups, a lot of friends, a lot of people who try different groups, and I guess speaking from the perspective of the Daily, with it being the biggest, it is great, like Max said, to see other publications kind of fill these niches on campus and have like a big overall community.
Yeah.
Thank you. All right, Souvier, can you talk a little bit about fun or festive programming? And then I think that Kiana is also going to answer that.
Sure, yeah. So one thing that's really unique and great about Stanford, I think, is the amount of flexibility that it gives to students to put on events of various sizes. So as in the organization I'm a part of is called Stanford Speakers Bureau, and so we do a lot of the guest speaking events at Stanford, everything from, writing an offer letter to reaching out to speakers to like day of, at the venue, welcoming them in and staffing the event. And there's a lot of steps that go into that. But there are other organizations that are not like directly, their intention is not necessarily event management per se, but they also have the ability to put on events of their own due to the amount of resources that Stanford gives student organizations. And it also allows them to, partner with each other events. So for example, Stanford Speakers Bureau partners with sorts of organizations that perhaps don't put on events super regularly to allow them to bring in a guest speaker. And this can be something of, 50 people, or it can be 500 people or 1,500 people. So I'd say that probably the takeaway is that, there's a huge diversity in the amount of events that we see in a particular year. And Stanford's really great about allowing us to put those on.
Kiana, do you want to answer?
Yeah, I can speak about student-hosted, student-created events, especially from a theater perspective. So most of the majority of theater shows on campus are student-directed, acted by by students, as well as everything from logistics, from building the set, from getting the space, coordinating all of that. They're all done by students. So you definitely get a lot of chances to showcase your work, but also to learn a lot of very useful managerial and administrative skills. Something that we as the Stanford Shakespeare Company have also really appreciate from Stanford is the ability to hold to create new events and open it up to the wider community. So something that we did this year was we got a professional Shakespeare acting teacher to Stanford to teach and train the new actors of the company, and we opened it up to the wider theater community. And it's great that we're able to be funded by Stanford to do that kind of workshop. So that's just one of the more ways that you as students you can hold events on campus.
Awesome. Okay, so just last question. I think several of y'all have addressed this, but does anyone want to speak a little bit more about how any of your organizations build community, have some rapport, or just form connections? Go ahead, Holden.
Yeah, I can take that. So yeah, speaking from my experience, one of the great things about Stanford that everybody will basically tell you is just, like I said, how welcoming organizations are, but also at a publication where our job is, being in touch with the community, knowing what's going on, not just writing, I should note, but like, we have a video team, we have a podcast team, we have people doing all these multimedia things. We talk to organizations and, kind of show different sides to the community. In doing so, that builds a community where, as a member of a publication, especially, I think, you become more in touch with, what's going on campus. And that leads to, a lot of cool, I think, conversations, both within these publications and also, between. So just, doing work that has you talking to people, no matter what it is such a valuable thing, I think, at Stanford.
Any other feedback, or should we move on to the, yeah, go ahead, Dan.
I'll address this, and there's also a question that said, how active is the filmmaking scene? I'll also take that on too. But so I think in terms of building community, particularly because with the two orgs I'm in, which is like Asian American Theater Project and Restorative Film Collective, both are very focused on like building community for like artists and like creatives of color. I will say like there are a lot of people at Stanford who are trying to do that work and build that community because it's really hard to find it both in the industry but also on campus. So there is like a lot of energy for things like that to happen in order like to really push people to pursue these fields despite minorities often like not having the same level of credibility and like respect in the field. So Restorative focuses on like helping filmmakers of color and building community in that, and ATP, Black Stage, and a bunch of other like theater orgs really help. I think we also in terms of like the filmmaking scene, loosely there are like various orgs. So there's Restorative for like POC, and then there is Cardinal Studios, which has been inactive this year but is kind of reviving like next year under new leadership, and focuses a lot on like film production. Of course, there's not going to be the same level of support as like a film school like USC or like Emerson. However, you can do what you can with like Stanford's resources. Like they're very much there, and like you are able to like kind of finesse student funding in order to make the creative projects that you want. So it's just a matter of like putting in the extra work in order to really push your art in that direction, but it does require a little bit of effort.
Thank y'all. Okay, I see some questions are coming in, so we're gonna start answering them. And then we're also gonna send out that bit.ly that's gonna have the breakout sessions. So I'm gonna combine the first two questions together, which is, what is the difference in content between the Stanford Review and the Stanford Daily? And Max, is there a space for conservatives on campus? So
Yeah, so the Daily is going to be a more standard newspaper, much bigger organization, podcasts, lots of satire, publication every single day. The Review is, we like to call it a conservative, libertarian, and contrarian newspaper. We don't publish every single day. We do not publish in print. We write probably between 2 and 5 articles per week, almost exclusively opinion content, challenging the status quo on campus. And as to the second question, is there a space for conservatives? Yes, absolutely. The Review is definitely one of those spaces. There are others. I'd encourage you to learn more about some of the other conservative or libertarian organizations on campus and see if they interest you. And specifically to answer this question, I'd encourage you to go to www.stanfordreview.org and read our Why You Should Choose Stanford if you are a conservative, a libertarian, or a contrarian.
Holden, do you have any part to that that you want to add?
So like I was saying earlier, I think one of the things that makes the Daily unique at Stanford is just the vast amount of different things happening at it, which is another thing that kind of separates, I think, in terms of other publications on campus. Like I was saying earlier, if you want to write, you can submit writing to any of these organizations. At the Daily, you know, if you want to do some coding, some web development that will go on a site people are seeing, you know, every day, or if you want to work in, you know, photography, videography, I mentioned, business, you know, working on ads and stuff like that. Really, any kind of work is the sort of thing we're looking for here, and because of the nature of it being an independent nonprofit, and you know, the way we're structured, there's just a lot of opportunities for different things, which I think kind of separates it.
Thanks. How about for everyone? What is time commitment like for student organizations? So maybe we can start with Suvir, talk maybe a little bit about some of the arts in Speakers Bureau, and then maybe drama and media.
Sure, yeah, and I think this is going to be a similar answer for organizations like the Daily, but the answer is that it's really the amount of time and involvement you want to, you know, take on. Something like putting on an event can, you know, for me might take like 15 hours, 20 hours in a week, or for, you know, one of the general members in Speakers Bureau might take 1 or 2 hours a week, and that's really an option that you choose to take on, right? I know for Stanford Daily, you can choose to write, you know, an article once or twice a quarter, or you can choose to be writing articles 3 times a week, right? And that's the choice of how you want to spend your time and how you're choosing to learn and grow. So I think as you become more senior members of organizations, that's usually when you decide, you know, is this something I want to keep on the side, or is this something I want to get more involved with? So yeah, I think that'll be a similar answer for a lot of the other organizations.
Does anyone have anything else to add to that?
In time commitment for the Review, and I think a lot of organizations on campus, is as much as you want. We meet once a week in Old Union, or this quarter over Zoom, and we argue for an hour about campus issues and national issues. And we usually get between 15 and 25 people in those meetings. Some of those people have never written for us. Some of those people write an article every month. We believe in it should be voluntary. And I think that you'll find that a lot of organizations you're able to engage with at the exact level that you want to. Obviously, it's going to be much more rewarding if you find a niche, find something that you love to spend your time on. And I know that that's what a lot of people find.
And then do we want to hear a little bit about the theater drama? Did you have something, Holden? Sorry.
Oh, I was going to answer a question in the chat really quickly about submitting op-eds to publications, or like submitting things as a non-staffer.
Let's move it to that one in a second. Let's just give the theater community a little bit about the time commitment, and then we'll do op-eds, and then we'll do the musical theater.
Yeah.
Do you want to go first?
In my experience, having done theater with a variety of different groups on campus, it really depends on the group. The Stanford Shakespeare Company, we audition at the start, and we kind of try to build a community. So our commitment is probably heavier than some other groups. Something about theater is that the week before shows is always an extremely heavy week. So I won't lie and say that like it's super easy to participate in theater, but it is very, it is a really great community to build skills. And I found that people who are in charge of theater groups are also, Stanford students, they're extremely flexible and understanding when it comes to having to take time away for other things like midterms or exams and stuff like that.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. Like, I think with theater in particular, it's a very labor-intensive art form. Of course, there are roles that require less time. Like if you're like in an assistant role, like of course you won't be devoting as much time. Speaking from personal experience, I directed a show like fall of this year, and I was putting in like double digits in terms of hours like every week. But that's also like as a director, like that's a whole like that's a whole jumble of other like roles you have to juggle on a day-to-day. So it's really whatever like you want to get out of it. And of course, like if you're an actor, like if you are in a main role with a lot of speaking parts, or like if there are not a lot of other actors in the show, like of course you're going to be going to rehearsal a lot. But if it's like a smaller role, less so of a time commitment.
Great, thanks. All right, go Holden for op-ed.
Yeah, I just saw this question. I think it resonated a lot because I think something that a lot of prospective frosh may be thinking about right now is like, how do I get involved? Or like, start already, getting involved in the community. And I think one unique thing about publications on campus is we do have op-eds and stuff. So you don't even need to be, on campus yet, be enrolled yet. The Daily just published an article the other day from some prospective students, calling for Stanford to do more to support workers. So like that was like an op-ed from students that are not yet even here. And I would just encourage people that are, looking to get involved in the community or looking to explore publications to see which publications sort of accept op-eds and how you might be able to contribute and have your voice heard already because, prospective students have a unique perspective. So that's something I'd put out there.
All right, thank you. Okay, do we want to address musical theater on campus? And then we'll probably let people go, but we'll stick around to answer other questions. So, musical theater.
Yeah, I can take on that question. So the biggest, I think, musical production on campus is done by a group called Ram's Head. It's always done in the spring. They choose the musical the year before that, and yeah, like my experience working on it as a designer is that it is a super open community, is very welcoming to people with a variety of experience. Ram's Head as an institution also has a lot of just a lot of institutional knowledge. I have never done a show where I was that involved with set designing. I've definitely learned a lot of skills from there. Other groups that also have done musical theater, albeit not as frequently, is LIT, which is Latinx in Theater. Asian American Theater Project has done musical theater at some point, I think, in the past. Musical theater is definitely not that common on campus because of the sheer scale of how the shows have to be. But from the experience of Latinx in theater, I think that if you want to, start something in musical theater, like there will be opportunities for you to do that.
Thank you all. Okay, so Profros, you can stay on here and listen to a few more of the panelists. Some of them are going to leave to go to their sessions, or you can go to the Zoom, to the breakout Zoom. So it's bit.ly/arts-other20. So arts-other20. And for the rest of y'all that are staying here, which it looks like there's still some people, we can continue to answer. And then any of the panelists who want to go to your breakout sessions, you all do that. And we'll just address the other questions here.
Come ask questions at the reviews breakout room. We'll be there for a while.
Okay. Suvir, I saw you may be interested in answering balancing STEM and doing extracurriculars in the humanities. Can you?
Sure. Yeah, so I am a STEM major. I study computer science, like many people on campus, and probably like many of you will be, um, which is time intensive, right? And I, like many others, take my academics seriously. But I think what you'll find is putting time into a student organization that's completely different than what you're studying is pretty rewarding because it allows you to, use different parts of your brain and spend your time in different ways. Um, even if I study computer science, and like these are not necessarily the same skills you use for event management and putting on a comedy show with Trevor Noah, right, or inviting Jennifer Lopez. Like that's completely different than what you do in class. But they're different skills, and even if it's not something you're necessarily going to use later on in life professionally, um, it's fun to take on new skills and to do something completely different.
Okay, I think we're going to answer a question about creative writing, right?
Yes. Yeah, I can take on that. There's if from what I remember correctly, there's currently one creative active literature magazine on campus, the Leland Stanford Quarterly magazine. There are different zines and magazines that people try to start, but usually, well, not usually, but so far they have not been able to really sustain it. However, from my experience, a lot of these magazines are backed by professors, so there are definitely again, a lot of space if you guys want to start something on your own. The Leland Stanford Quarterly magazine essentially does creative writing of all forms, so there's no limit of what genre you can write in or what they also publish like visual arts pieces and etc. Yeah, yeah. I'll also say I also need to go to table for my I see questions about the Stanford Shakespeare Company. There are a lot of people over at our Zoom room right now, so feel free to head over if you're interested.
Yeah, agreed. So go talk to Hyun in the Shakespeare Company session. All right, you and me, Sabir. Let's see what else is we can answer. I don't know if there's anything else that will. How about someone asked this earlier? They asked kind of about support from faculty and staff. Do you know? Do you think you could address something along those lines?
Yeah, I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, Ankita, I think a lot of the advisory roles in terms of student organizations are more informal relationships. Like these organizations are completely run by students, but faculty at Stanford have a lot to offer, right, in terms of an advisory capacity. Um, and I think a lot that they can do for you is in terms that like what makes gives them a unique sort of power, I guess, is the connections that they have around campus and with people around the world. Really, they can sort of make whatever initiative you have and then give it a whole new level by adding their credential to it. So I think that's what you'll find. But yeah, the main thing is that they are run by students.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you answered it really well. The organizations are very autonomous. Students run. Students get to make all the decisions for them. But if you need advice from faculty, we have lots of wonderful faculty that are willing to give feedback or their 2 cents. And then the same with staff who might have some sort of expertise or some sort of collaborative point. Let's see, we answered the same one. I think we have most of the specific ones. I don't know if you can answer the one about writers. Otherwise, maybe we'll just dismiss it and see if there's anyone else that wanted to answer anything. Or do you think we missed anything, Sabir, that nobody asked about that you think would be helpful? Because there'll be people that are watching this, a recorded version of this. So I don't know if there's anything that will be helpful for them.
Yeah, I think maybe just reiterating the fact that these are not, you shouldn't be stressed about, oh, I have to join like a particular type of organization. I want to, I'm pre-med, so I should join like the pre-med association or something. I want to go to business school, so I need to join like the pre-business association. I'm sure those things are great, but I would encourage you to reach out and try to find diverse experiences, because in college, you know, Stanford allows a lot of resources, and you should utilize them to sort of get as much of a different perspective as you can.
Yeah, that is a phenomenal answer. I think that's a
Thank you.
good one. I don't see anyone else asking questions. A really good one to end on. So Subir, thank you. I want to thank all the other panelists. They left, but they'll be able to see this video, and I'll tell them thank you personally later. If there are any other questions about student organizations in general, you can reach out to the Office of Student Engagement. So it's just studentengagement@stanford.edu, and we'll be happy to answer questions or put you in touch with student leaders from other organizations. And otherwise, we appreciate your time. Thanks.